If you've heard of the term survival mode, fight or flight, sympathetic stress, you know you can feel stuck in this state. You feel overwhelmed, mentally checked out, various other hormonal issues, sometimes visceral issues, chronic tension in the body, chronic injury, and you may feel like you've been stuck in this state for some people for decades, years, decades, long period of time, and feel like you can't shift from it. In this video, I want to explain and show why we get stuck in survival mode and what you could do to actually shift out of it, and how it's a neurological problem. When we're looking at survival mode, when we're looking at sympathetic stress, we have to understand there's two parts of the nervous system, simplicity's sake. You've got the sympathetic nervous system, that's the fight or flight, the survival mode, the ready response. Then you have the parasympathetic, and that's the opposite arc, the one that keeps us calm, keeps us in a recuperative state. Now, the majority of people, ideally, you want to be able to switch in between the two. You don't want to be stuck in one or stuck in the other. Almost every individual that we see here at the practice is stuck in that sympathetic survival mode, fight or flight state. And in that state, if you're stuck in it for a long time, you can't shift between the two. That's when you get problems. When we're looking at survival mode, there is a reason why it's come to pass and it exists. It doesn't exist for no reason. Our bodies aren't designed a certain way for no reason. But that survival mode is there, so when there is an immediate perceived danger or threat to life, that kicks in. It gets you going. It makes you ready for action. It gets you ready in a state where, okay, I need to basically survive this next bit for now. If you think people engage in this state when it isn't actually necessary, there isn't an immediate danger. Ideally, if we ever go into that sympathetic ready response, we need to be able to get out of it. You don't want to stay in a state where your heart rate's going, where you're breathing shallow, where your gut functions shut off. When we're in that state, that's when we get problems. When we shift into the parasympathetic state, where the body's recuperating, recovering, we're more relaxed. In that state, other things can happen that are more conducive to long-term health. And even in situations where there is a perceived danger, threat, a stress, you've got daily things that you're going on, troubles, work, family, you're everywhere, trying to be everywhere at one time. Even when you've got all of that go, go, go in our environment, you still want to be able to do that in a parasympathetic state. Because if when life gets going, you just shift straight into survival mode, it can feel like a whirlwind. You get lost in that state, and then all of a sudden, trying to get out of that becomes really difficult. But before we touch more on that, why do we shift into that survival mode? What about daily life and stresses make us shift into that state? And there is loads of things that can go into this, but what we're going to talk about on a simple level is what stresses make us or enable us to stay in that survival mode. So when we're looking at stress in the nervous system, there are three types of stress. You've got the mental stress, physical stress, and chemical stress. And there's some examples you can see here on the diagram. Disclaimer, stress isn't bad. And you can see here, for example, on the physical stress, you can see movement. I think we could all be in agreement that movement isn't a bad thing. Movement's actually necessary. Daily thoughts, again, you can't not think. You can't not observe thoughts. The thoughts are there. When we're looking at the chemical stress, food, like not all food is bad for you. There's natural foods that are actually really supportive of the environment. But all of these things naturally perturb and stress our system. You can't go through life without stress. And this is really important because many of us have similar stresses to those around us, family, friends, colleagues. But why then don't they feel the same way we do? Why don't they feel the same way you do when you have to go to a particular activity? When you are just sitting down, you're meant to be having your relaxed time. Why can't you shift into a relaxed parasympathetic state out of survival mode, but your family and friends can? Because the impact of stress on their nervous system hasn't been as pertinent in the past. So let's track back a little bit. So when we're looking at sources of stress in the body, over life, our bodies adapt to stress. If you think everyone has a capacity to deal with life, and ideally that capacity is at 100%. When your nervous system is functioning at its best, you have the largest capacity in that context to deal with life. Imagine it like going to the gym, for example. If you're lifting weights, you lift weights within the range that you can. And if you want to get stronger, you challenge yourself a bit more. But you don't do it outside of the context of more than what you can manage. Because if you have stress or weight that is more than you can manage, your body can't deal with it. And then you get, for example, injured. Or you can't complete the task. Now, many people, when they have a particular stress in their life, and that stress then puts a trauma in the body, the stress may, if it's a super high unnatural stress, like crazy chemical loads, crazy physical stress, a crazy emotional event, yes, if that's really, really high, then that may be the way that overdoes it for you. But if your body, your nervous system can't deal with stress at 100% of its capacity, then that stressor, you're not dealing with it at its best. And when that happens, that puts trauma into the body. And then when you have trauma into the body, all of a sudden, these mental stresses like the relationships, like the media, like the walking or running that you're doing that you want to be able to do, but you feel like you can't. All of a sudden, some of these really basic tasks feel really difficult. And you know they shouldn't. You know they shouldn't feel difficult. But why do they? And that's because your capacity to deal with stress isn't at 100%. And the reason this is important in this context is when we're in a survival state, more than not, that occurs from trauma or stress, I should say, that's built up in your nervous system that your body's not been able to deal with over time, that then closes the window as to what you can deal with. And then when that happens, when that stress gets built into the body, there's more trauma in the body, your nervous system gets stuck more in that go, go, go mode because it's not dealing with stress well, it's getting overwhelmed. And then when it's getting overwhelmed, you stay more stuck in the fight or flight state. You stay more stuck in sympathetic dominance. And that's when you can't now access the rest and digest state, the relaxation, the recuperation, where your body and nervous system can thrive. And then when you're in that parasympathetic, when you can't access that parasympathetic state, it makes these stresses and life in general way, way more challenging. It feels more tiring. It feels like things aren't going well. It feels like you can't focus. Those repetitive injuries don't make sense. Your body is always tight. You can't relax in the evenings when you want to. You can't be completely engaged in the room with your family, with your friends. There's always something going on in the back of your mind. That inability to switch off isn't just a mental thing. That injury that you keep having isn't just I'm just overdoing it. It may not be that you're overdoing it. It may be that your body's capacity to deal with life is so small because your body is in such a sympathetic state that you can't actually live at your best. Now, rather than trying to change all of these stresses, because I'm sure you can agree, some of these stresses are super, super normal. They're natural. They're part of life. Having relationships, moving, just in general, challenging your body a bit because you want to and should be able to challenge your body. Having particular breathing air, using technology, like all of these things are things that we do in daily life. But then why do some people who are doing these exact things feeling good? Why are they healthy in comparison to others where it feels like you have problem after problem after problem and it just can't seem to shift? Now, these stresses, we can go into this in a big way, but these stresses can originate literally from birth through all of those early years of life, even into then the stuff that we accumulate over time. And the more stress you have that you haven't been able to deal with, the more your body may be stuck in that sympathetic state. Now, when we're looking at survival mode, some of these you may recognize, but we also measure at roots using our neurological scans, using our movement testing, doing particular consultation analysis, if your body is giving signs where it may be stuck in a fight or flight, sympathetic dominant state. If you're someone that has chronic tension in the body, that's not normal. It's not normal to be chronically tense. It's not normal to be restless or always a bit jittery. That's really common what I see in practice. But also these other things you can see, change in appetite. We have a number of clients that their appetite actually improves with care. Because when you're in survival mode, if your body's perceiving danger and it's not going to survive the next couple hours, it doesn't care about eating. It doesn't care about your digestion. It doesn't care about your immune system function. It is quite literally about get me through these next few hours, these next few minutes. Now, if you're in that state for long enough, you're gonna get ill regularly. Your body's going to feel run down. You're not gonna feel like you can give your all. You're not gonna feel like your body's working for you and you actually feel like more yourself, like you've got that capacity to work. And then stuff like sleep, blood pressure changes. Then when we have a look at this larger diagram, you'll see more on a visceral scale what may happen. If we highlight here, for example, breathing rate changes. For example, digestion changes. When we have a look at this diagram, you got all of these things that can change. Literally all of these things that can change. And if your body is stuck in that sympathetic state, longevity-wise, your health won't be as good. But the really awesome thing is when your nervous system begins to function well, we start opening up that capacity to access parasympathetic state, that recuperation, that relaxation. That's when your sleep improves. That's when your mood improves. You don't overthink as much. You can be more present in the room. When you're eating, you actually digest your food, you actually chew your food. It's really, really important that out of that survival mode, you realize how much your body's actually capable of doing. Because it's really common, I see and hear in practice, is when you've been in that state for so long, you don't actually realize what it's like to be in a relaxed state. You don't actually understand what it is to be in that parasympathetic state where you can now live life with more clarity at your optimum. But when you're stuck, you don't realize what is normal. What is familiar becomes familiar really quickly. And it's really important with chiropractic, with improving the nervous system function, when we're making adjustments to the nervous system, we shift the body over time out from that sympathetic dominant state into a parasympathetic, more relaxed, more open state. And that's when your body does amazing things. Your nervous system's functioning at its best. You don't have to micromanage your environment. You can trust that your body that is designed to regulate itself, be at its optimum, can manage life at its best. Because if your nervous system can't manage the environment at its best with 100% of resources behind it, life's going to be significantly harder. And we see that change a lot in practice. When the nervous system improves, when your regulatory process improves, when you're not stuck in a sympathetic, alert, danger mode state all the time, and you can switch between the two, that's when you experience health at another level. I hope that was insightful. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to help. And I'll see you in the next video. You see that change a lot in practice. When the nervous system improves, when your regulatory process improves, when you're not stuck in a sympathetic, alert, danger mode state all the time, and you can switch between the two, that's when your body, that's when you experience health at another level. I hope that was insightful. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to help. And I'll see you in the next video.